Today on the episode, we are covering New Year's resolutions, important dates to know, and what happens when you challenge the government. Hint, it's often not a good idea. This is Distilled Security Podcast. All right, so welcome back, everyone. This is episode 20 here. Wow. We're filming in 2026 in the new year, so cheers, guys. You know, another successful years of podcasting, if you call it success. I don't know.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm having fun, so that's success.
Exactly. So, segue. Have you guys set any New Year's resolutions into this? I don't want to do predictions. Everybody does predictions. It's boring. They're always wrong. So, you know, that's a thing. But what are things that you guys are thinking about for 2026? Things that maybe that worked that you want to double down on? Things that maybe change up to refocus and get better at?
Yeah.
Anything?
I mean, I probably have one big one.
Okay.
And it's really, as I reflect on 2025, I ended up getting myself into situations where I was spending a lot of time on things that weren't necessarily super productive or enjoyable, and missing out on time that I would have, like on other things that I would have rather spent time doing. So
you're talking about like family versus
business?
Yeah.
So like there's definitely some work activities that I'm going to find ways to get some help with in different ways, or just stop doing entirely and spend more time either on personal development or reconnecting with some people that I've lost touch with, and just doing family stuff. So for me, that's the really big one. It's just kind of like a reshuffling of priorities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Joe?
Yeah. Well, I came up with, the way you framed it was good. I came up with a couple that I've thought about for a while, and then a third one that's a little more of just how to do things. So my three are: one, simplify. Everything I'm doing, there's always I'm always finding a way to do it simpler, and I think that ties in everything. And then another thing is just getting back to basics.
Yep.
So many things I've been jumping into and looking at. A ton of it was, really this problem wouldn't have happened if we would have just done some fundamentals. And that's happening throughout everything that we're doing at CISO, everything we're doing with our customers. And the third thing that's kind of new is just to reframe of something, and it's do more science projects. And I'll talk about that one in a minute, but simplify. So, one of the things I was thinking, like if everything is a priority, nothing is. And if I don't simplify, things are just going to fall apart. And what that means to me is doing fewer initiatives, reduce the number of tools. One of the things that we're looking at is, instead of having all these different AI recording tools and everything, just kind of go with Copilot. I mean, it's built into everything we can do at inside of our M365 environment. So that seems to be simpler, and have fewer strategic priorities. One of the things that we're tackling at CISO this year that we tried before and maybe went a little bit, we didn't know exactly what we're doing, is the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So we're going back at that again. And last time we didn't really get all of our team involved, and this time we're really getting everybody involved to make good decisions. And thinking about those kinds of things. And then on the back to basics, the fundamentals, no matter all this stuff that's happening, we're not seeing those change. But the consequences are increasing dramatically for everything that's going on. And so many companies we're still seeing them not getting the security basics right, like identity patching, inventory, backups, vendor oversight. These are the things that keep biting everybody. And then this past year, I was looking at some news articles over the break here, and I saw a couple articles. And one of them was like, what was the biggest 2025 news stories, cybersecurity-related news stories? And as I was going through those, I was struck by how many of them came back to the same thing: complexity, neglecting the fundamentals, reactive decision-making. And so as we go through those, the 6 or so core areas I was able to group all these articles findings into were identity and access management, the problems with that, patching, all the things I said before. And, you zoom out, and like the 3 things we're seeing are things like abusing trust is a huge thing. Again, ignoring fundamentals was a huge takeaway. And then complexity, not being as simple, it turned these problems into crisis for so many companies on these articles.
Well, and just to add to one thing that you said, the consequences are increasing, but the visibility too, not to steal thunder from the first topic we have on deck, but we'll get into that a little bit. But,
this is the first topic we have on deck.
Well, the second topic we have on deck. But I mean, I think the visibility for those problems, right, through regulatory landscape and things like that, that stuff's going to surface more and more often.
Yeah.
I
Then
love
they
those.
never reduce regulation. It's like, hey, we think this is worthless now. We'll just remove it.
Yeah, not likely.
No, it just stays there.
Right.
And then my third one, let me talk a little bit more about the science projects. I've been doing this a lot at home too.
With your kids or
with kids, with having conversations with the wife, with things I'm doing at work, and really it's separating emotion from the actual analysis of solving a problem. And problems are they're the inputs, they're not the personal areas. And so one of the things I'm finding is if I step back and rethink about any of these problems, there's only a finite number of real solutions. So when the problem is when you're feeling the emotions of the problem, there's infinite solutions. There's infinite number of things, and you can't get your head around it. When you step back and you say, well, look, for that item we want to do, for that thing we want to do, there's probably only 3 or 4 realistic choices we really have. One of those is do nothing. One of those is, it's probably, there's like a million of them that could be in the realm of things, but they're not in the realm of our financial possibilities, our time possibilities. And so really it comes down to, we really don't have that many choices to make. There's 3 things we could do if we didn't do anything. And when I look at it that way and treat the problem like that, it stops the emotion from driving it and turns it more into it being a manageable issue to solve. And once you start to frame it that way, and this worked 2 or 3 times over the break. And I'm like, you know what? I just got to add that one on to my simplicity and my getting back to the basics. And man, did it really help. So
that's
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's so interesting. When I heard science experiments, I first thought about the experiments part. So it's like, oh, I'm going to do A/B testing or all these different things like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing you say now, it's like, oh no, it's just more taking a very analytical, as you put, remove emotion from the analysis.
Right. Come up with a hypothesis, test it.
Very scientific method. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. What I was instantly thinking about, you were talking about Tom Hanks before we started recording, the movie The Burbs, when they're down in the basement, that's the science experiment I was thinking you're doing. With the boiler. Great movie. That was a good movie.
We'll have to add it to the mix. The kids all, we never go wrong. We do family movie night with the Tom Hanks movie. So.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, we haven't seen that one yet. So as a family, so that.
Okay. Yeah, we just showed our kids over the break. We actually watched The Burbs. Carrie Fisher, Tom Hanks. What was that? Corey, the guy from the Goonies, is in it. One of the neighbors. Phenomenal cast. It's just great movie. Into that.
Yeah, that's excellent. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, so there are a number of things. Well, funny enough, I always have a running list of goals that I just kind of transfer over. Some get done, into that. But I always have this running list that people often make fun of me on into it because I have very achievable goals onto it, like eat and drink water regularly, exercise 4 times a week, which I didn't really accomplish in 2025, 2026 goals, and all this stuff. But then I have things like see the Aurora Borealis, or take a train ride in Norway, because it's just a beautiful landscape into that.
Was that your screensaver for a while? Was that the
it
Norway
was.
train?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I got it from, into that. And it's just a number of things like I want to do this. It's on the list. Another one is do more family vacations. One thing both Jen and I are bad about is planning vacations. We'll do a number of short weekends, 2, 3, 4 day little getaways, type of thing. But we're bad at planning one, hey, we should go a week here and everything. So we're just both not that personality. So we need to do a couple more of those a year, with the family. And we did. we usually do vacations as a matter of like convenience because we went down to Florida, this past week over Christmas, but it was to the in-laws, so it's not really a vacation, it's going to see family, into that, which, it was beautiful with Florida weather and all that stuff. But
getaways have different purposes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But not really like going to the beach just with your family or something, from an enjoyable standpoint. So I have a number of them that I'll be like refreshing and kind of going through.
Nice.
I definitely, there's some business goals that I have coming out of the new year. I obviously have a lot of marketing with Episky that I need to get better at, and shift and kind of respond to, where I'm seeing everything going. I want to write a book eventually, and I don't know if that's going to be a 2026 thing. I have a number of ideas and outlines that I've already done, certain things like that.
Yeah.
And just as far as the industry goes, getting more efficient in what I'm doing every day. Like I'm, doing a lot more with AI workflows to try to get the stuff that I do like repetitively and get it into something that all I have to do is review and adjust, much like we had that article where those hackers kind of did from start to finish targeting and everything. Like, hey, I want to do marketing ads, and if it's not reaching these stats, pull them by, this date, and just doing automated stuff.
Fully automated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just kind of driving with the data, and you can always override it and stuff of that nature, but there should be a pipeline and a workflow through a lot of this stuff and just automating that as much as I can. I've been over the vacation for a lot of the part, like I've been doing a lot of vibe coding and everything. So there's been tasks where we didn't have like where you could set your own avatars in Episky. And I'm like, do this and do it for a company and now do this. And there's a little bit of upfront work, like where you want to save it, and how are you going to architect it. But I put it in, and I had it to upload, and now it supports, company and your own personal avatars,
that's awesome.
Through the
Very
entire the application and everything. It's little things like that, with it. But, yeah, I think, this year I'm going to be getting a lot of, hopefully, a foundation of Episky kind of going. Like we just launched, a few months ago. That's going to be my big focus going into 2026, and hopefully get something sustainable is my goal here in the next 3 months is ideal.
Fantastic.
Into that. So, and then growing from there, and then seeing maybe half year where to adjust from there. So,
yeah.
I like that. I like how some of the things I was thinking about for my list, you have to do for your list to actually work. Like automate things. You don't want to automate a complex process if you can simplify it first.
Yeah, and if there's a lot of decision factors into that, like you need to basically write it out in a script of like, if it does this, do this, or analyze it, come up with a suggestion on a percentage-wise, rate something, and then make an execution based on the confidence level.
Yeah, you need the structured logic.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's always adjusting it. AI, AI will be well into 2026. That's not going away anytime. And it's only going to, like, this is the worst we've had AI right now. So as we're going into 2026, the logic's going to get better, the context, everything, everybody's building context into it so it can pull all this information, make decisions based on your tickets, your emails, your documents, your whatever. Everything's going to be connected.
So you just made a prediction. You're saying AI is not going away in 2026?
I'm pretty confident.
I thought it was a fad. I thought it was a 2025 fad.
I know, just like the internet.
Yeah. Well, they'll shut them both down at the same time.
Yeah, right.
It'll be blame it on DNS.
Or maybe EMP, goes off or something like that.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
We haven't talked about AI DNS yet, so.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't know. Using logical names to call agents between agents. Orchestration.
That's still DNS, right?
IP
address. Yeah.
Effectively.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of things that I definitely want to get to a point where I'm not doing a lot of the stuff, kind of like you, where like I don't like marketing. It's a necessary thing, and I need to get good at it, but I don't really like it.
Right.
Like I'd rather pay somebody else to do it really well, and tell me the pros and cons, and I'll make a decision. But based on capital and and revenue and all that stuff. But doing it, it's not enjoyment of
Yeah.
mine,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
type of
You got to
thing.
get those learn who you are so they can come and sign up somehow.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you need it. Like there's
Right.
I remember, I don't know if you guys remember the Brian Tracy Learn to Sell back in the 90s. He got really famous, had a whole bunch of books and everything. He always talked about marketing is like winking at a girl in the dark. Only you know what you are doing. You know, type of thing. So yeah,
That's fantastic.
He had a number of little like quips like that
Yeah.
that still to this day I remember. He's like, yeah, winking at a girl in the dark. Only you know what you're doing, you know?
Yeah, I find it really interesting how the people who sell the books on sales are really good at selling their books on sales.
Yeah, right.
But when I go and read their book, it doesn't kind of work the same way.
Yeah, I know. I was like, just sell. But yeah, so yeah, that's a lot of with this year and everything, and hopefully, get to a good spot, and maybe we'll grow the company a little bit, and get to do less stuff, you know, which will be ideal. So,
It's a dream.
so great. So we all wrapped up with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll probably come. I can't help but coming back to these resolutions as you guys talk about your items. As we hit these other items, I'm sure we'll start reflecting back
Intertwined.
to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I'll actually post this on a blog and everything. I don't know if you guys can see. I have it broken down by health, spiritual, finance, business, which I did this. Awesome. Expand myself, read a book every 2 weeks, learn a language, Spanish. I put as ideal, write a book, volunteer, teach, survival, go shooting at least once a month, learn archery, traps, knots, learn Krav Maga, and then like a whole bunch of hobby, family, and travel, into this. So
It's funny. I have a similar thing. It's organized a little differently, but it's
okay.
very similar. But It's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
yeah, but they're all things like these are my relatives out in California. I need to go visit them.
Yeah.
Just things like, hey, I need to get these done, and to get a little bit more free space and a little bit more room to breathe. I feel like then I can start doing some hobby or family oriented or spiritual oriented stuff. If I get some of the pressures of business off my mind.
Yeah. Are Rick and I your accountability coach? So next
Can be.
month we're going to ask
Yeah,
where
we'll
this
go
is
through.
at, and we're going to see
Look,
what
I just
you've got
got one.
scheduled.
I launched.
I'm a huge fan of backlog management. Like I take all this back to feature development and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, if this is your backlog,
Yeah.
how are you going to chunk through it?
Yeah, you got to use 1 month sprints here and schedule this stuff out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff, like set up a distilling company. That's long term, type of thing. I need a good other revenue source.
Yeah.
That's more hobby business than anything else. But some of these, I could definitely do. But a lot of this is, just time I need to carve off in my everyday life. Into that.
Well, some of this, I'm thinking now that I'm in the middle of the entrepreneurial operating system stuff, this EOS stuff, it sounds like you have some things on there that are on your 10-year target.
Yep.
And then the next thing you do is you define your 3-year, your 3-year plan. And then from there, you can come and say, what are you going to do this year? That gets you to the 3.
Yep.
So it drives you to the 10. So,
And by the way, something I got for Christmas, and I thought I'd bring it on to there.
Oh,
so
yeah.
have you guys heard James Clear, the Atomic
That's a great book.
Habits
Oh, yeah.
and everything?
Yeah.
He came out this, I think just got released a month or two ago or something like that. They made a workbook now.
oh, really?
That basically will help you kind of fill in the blanks of what your goals are and kind of do all that stuff and, apply the book, basically.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll
type
have
of
to
thing.
get that.
So, yeah, if you're looking at it, I got it.
I just thought it was a different cover. I didn't recognize. I didn't see the
so
workbook.
this is
Yeah,
the
that's cool.
workbook of this. So, if somebody needs a little bit more planning, into this is perfect. It has a big, text boxes for you to list everything out and get it kind of organized and actually form an atomic habit, into that.
I wonder if somebody created a chat GPT or GPT and trained it on atomic habits, so you can use that as
I'm sure they did.
to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I'm always humored. Have you seen some of the commercials for Chat GPT?
No.
It's like, I want to do 20 pull-ups, and this is a TV commercial, and they're here's a plan, for doing 20 pull-ups. First week start with 1. I'm like, can't they just Google? Like, this isn't a huge
Hey, there is no more just Google anymore.
Yeah, that's true,
You're
actually.
going to ask.
I know, but it was so
Gemini
funny.
or
Like, it
Copilot?
was so generic of like,
Right.
I want to do more pull-ups. And like, I wonder
Start
how
with
I
one.
get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
a great Christmas gift. Any great Christmas gifts on your side, Rick?
Oh, let me see. This hat. Really like this hat,
I like
actually.
that hat.
Yeah. There are a couple really good things. But ultimately, yeah, I don't know. I have this thing where in the background of like when I'm on webcams and stuff, I was just talking to Amber about this today. It's like, well, because I kind of am developing a hat collection. So I might just change the entire backdrop to like hanging a whole bunch of hat racks.
Nice.
And then just sort
yeah.
of showing it all. I'm moving the table. Showing it all at once. So anyway, I think this hat is the first in a long line of new hats.
So funny enough, so I didn't really get any Christmas presents because my Christmas present, talk with Jen, is I want to redo the backdrop to my camera.
Oh.
So in my office right now, there's a spot for a built-in, and we elected not for the company to do it because A, quality wouldn't have been great, and B, we didn't need to spend the money on a plan to just throw something in. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to get for Christmas. Eventually, I have to get somebody. I've been designing a little bit on ChatGPT on how I want basically the bookshelf and everything, and I want to have a record player and all that stuff. Base into that, and plus crystal spirit set somewhere in there, and all the books and all that stuff. So that's what I'm technically getting for Christmas. But
I love it.
Well, I can't wait to schedule my next video conference with each
right.
of you so I can see these.
Yeah.
Mine's just a blur. It's still a blur. I haven't changed from being a blur. But my Christmas present, maybe you can read this. What does this say?
I love that. I find your lack of cybersecurity disturbing. That's perfect.
Nice.
So I get a different cybersecurity related shirt for various birthdays and Christmas.
That's
so.
great.
Nice. So that's all you get?
That's all I get. No, I got so it's like, so did you ever get your wife a vacuum cleaner for Christmas? And it's probably the worst thing, but these days now, that's like the kind of stuff showing up on her wish list. Well, she got me a small handheld chainsaw. That is really, for getting the limbs pruned and stuff. So,
Nice.
that was fun. And one of those, and I thought they wouldn't work
So
well.
you're Clark Griswold.
Yeah,
from that.
exactly. Yeah.
Fix a new post.
We just watched that. Yeah. And then another thing is you put it over your shoulder and it does the finger neck massage. And I always thought that would never work.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Is it good?
It works so well.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I did get. So I think my favorite gift that I gave this year was to my wife, and it was a big towel warmer that stays in the bathroom, and that seems to be a hit so
That
far.
seems like
yeah.
a luxury thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but it's pretty easy.
Well, you should see the one thing that my wife wanted, and it was pricey. It was like $400. So that was her big thing. Is one of those things that I guess vibrates. You stand up on it just vibrates you.
Yeah.
She said it's good for draining your lymphatic nodes and stuff of that nature. It reminds me of the old fashioned. If you remember, when they were doing exercises.
Oh, that's just what I was thinking of. You were saying it. Yeah.
They're like.
Yeah.
That's basically what it does. It just vibrates you as you stand on it.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm like, okay. And then you get off, and it's like you burned 80 calories. It's like, okay.
Yeah. So can you drink bourbon while you stand on it?
I mean, you can if you're talented.
Yeah.
Try
We
to
work at
keep a
that
center
skill.
of with it.
Yeah. Good. It probably gets you a core stability then
Yeah,
too.
right.
Yeah.
And that'd be 0 calories because you're adding and subtracting at the same time.
Right.
So,
Like eating celery.
but yeah, after this, I'll show you guys upstairs and everything. It's interesting. It's what you wanted, So
Yeah,
it's
awesome.
one of those things. So.
Perfect.
Yeah. But anyway, so going into from resolutions and everything, 2026 has a number of dates, and I thought maybe we'd cover a little bit of these. If you guys weren't aware of some of the dates that are going live, these are privacy things that have been updated, different regulations, mainly regulations or acts, but these are some dates that you need to be aware of, I would think. Some of them probably not applicable. Some are EU specific, state specific, all that stuff. But the first one here is the EU Cyber Resilience Act. mandatory reporting starts later this year. And what does that mean from a business standpoint? Well, if you're in the EU, what they have for IoT and embedded systems, you need to start reporting vulnerabilities within 24 hours, starting September 11th, 2026. So any products, that you have out there, which is a lot, and you serve the EU market, this is now a requirement that vulnerability disclosures go up within 24 hours, which I haven't looked in too deep with it. I'm sure there has to be some clauses in
There are
this.
some caveats, yeah.
Yeah. Have you looked into it?
I know, probably maybe a little more.
Okay.
But so there's some notable exceptions.
Okay.
So first and foremost, any pure software as a service or platform as a service is excluded. This is really just tied to things that is related to a device. So
like IoT.
IoT stuff, or even software if
Like off
it
the
must
shelf.
be installed on a server, for
Gotcha.
instance, right? But if it's pure PaaS or SaaS play, then it's not that.
Yeah.
There's also some things that are accepted based on prior legislation. So medical devices, they have a whole different thing that they have to align to. Automotive is different. Marine stuff is different.
Critical infrastructure?
Critical infrastructure is a part of this.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, not SaaS or PaaS only. And then they have some additional stuff for critical infrastructure too. But the other thing that's notable is the fines and the markings that things have to be like CE compliant or certified or whatever. That is December 2027. So they're just trying to spin up the engine to receive and evaluate all these disclosures that are going to come from all these software producers and device manufacturers.
Gotcha. Now, like I said, I haven't looked into this too deeply, but have they put considerations? Like, what if they don't have a fix yet? Are they going to, you have to put it out still?
My knowledge, and again, this is somewhat cursory, but my understanding currently is, if you are reasonably confident that your product has an issue that is being exploited in the wild, you have to tell them.
Well, what
it's
if
the
it's not
actively
being exploited?
Well,
in the wild?
one of the notes I saw here was the actively exploited piece, which I will help you tie down. To what degree is your implementation actively exploited,
right?
Versus you're just using off the shelf, public software.
And notably too, though, this is for organizations that make stuff, but also organizations that sell stuff or distribute stuff. There's I think 3 designations, but they're escaping me right now. There's like manufacturer, distributor, and a third one, maybe implementer, something like that. But if you resell things that have vulnerabilities, if you're responsible for reselling it in the EU, you also have an obligation to disclose and so on and so forth. So I haven't read up too much on the apparatus that the various member states are spinning up to receive all these notifications, but it's potentially quite a bit of information, and I'll be interested in seeing how they kind of consume it, respond to it, all that stuff. But again, the fines and the teeth of this, my knowledge is they don't start until December 2027.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But you got about but it goes into effect. It says September 2026.
Yeah.
So you got about 8-9 months here to figure out whether this applies to you, and if it does, get a process in place.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there is actually a good checklist on, I think it's like cyberresilience.eu or something, whatever the official government website for it. They have a compliance checklist kind of pre-baked that the regulating entity put out.
Open source?
Open source is excluded. That's one of the actually, let me rephrase that. They have to report if a vulnerability is being exploited, but they're excluded from financial penalties if they don't do stuff about it or something like that. There's the financial, like the fines part, I know they're excluded from, but they're still expected to report.
Yeah, not having looked at this, I would imagine that if there's just open source out there, it's probably not as much on the open source creator or maintainer group as it is on the company who is a for-profit company making a thing that they're selling and implement that library into their stuff. So they're going to need to figure out SBOM. They're going to need to figure out what's all included, it comes back to third-party risk and understanding, are they using something that has a vuln? Do they have a process in place to know that there's new vulns in things they're using? And tying that to actively exploited issues.
Yeah, so I think they said very explicitly they're not going to fine open source companies, but they expect them to still report like if they know about stuff. But to your point, I think there's this weird exponential notification thing that's potentially going to happen, right? There's an issue with an open source library that's then used in a dozen products, that's then sold by 5 dozen distributors, and all of a sudden one issue could have multiples of notifications.
Oh, right. Yeah, a lot of reporting requirements.
Yeah, so then I'm like, oh, well, one, all these organizations are going to have to your point, spin up the apparatus to identify and notify. And there's all sorts of other things that go into this act, like all your standard risk assessments, and how are you going to make sure you know if there's an actively exploited vulnerability and that stuff.
Well, most of the times I see open source get vulns reported. It's not the maintainers of the open source who are finding it. It's one of the companies that are using it. They're doing their own testing. They come across something through a web app pen test. They figure out what it was, and then they realize it was unknown vuln in one of the open source libraries.
Yeah, so it's potentially a big ecosystem, but right now it's just reporting, and you have a little bit of time to know whether or not you.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, it'll be we'll be on episode 27 in no time, and then we'll be in August, and this will be right around the corner.
Well, and like a lot of EU compliance stuff, member states have the authority to implement their own tweaks to it. And so there is a confounding factor for all these organizations that build stuff or sell stuff in member state countries, and that you have to know about sort of the general EU regulations and the default stance there, but then you need to know about all the local members. It's very similar to privacy. Yeah. You have to know about all the member states and all the different tweaks and tunings that they do, and who's particularly militant in terms of enforcement and who might be less so, and all those things. So that's a big one.
Yeah. Speaking of privacy, California updated their CCPA, and it starts kicking in yesterday.
Right.
So this was an update they did with a little bit more, it wasn't, I would say, substantial, but risk assessments for larger companies now start to have to be done into that cybersecurity audits by third-party companies, need to be done coming a little bit later for smaller companies and everything like that. If you're in California or deal with California consumers, make sure you have your counsel and your privacy offices look at this and ensure you're adhering to some of this stuff and everything.
Yeah.
So,
that's an interesting one. And risk assessments, they seem confusing, but they really are not going to be that. They're not that hard to do if you just sit down and work on it. And I think the biggest thing is who's going to explain to all these companies that process this information, even these small ones. And I'm wondering if there's any exception for a company that based on size for that. But how big of a company do you have to be, or small of a company you have to be to have to do that risk assessment?
Yeah, one of my absolute favorite things, and I will continue to steal it ruthlessly. Many years ago, probably a decade or two ago, I saw some Ernst & Young stuff about risk assessments. And I don't know if it was public or part of an assessment that we got or something like that. But they framed risk assessments as it's just the what could go wrongs. And and it's just, you can get wrapped around the axles on the details, and you have to have an appropriate level of formality and methodology and all that stuff. But I always loved the framing of, we just need to talk about what could go wrong and what are you doing about it?
Now, that makes sense. And, we see companies that get way confused or think it's too big of a problem to solve on a risk assessment. And, just keeping it simple, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should do another topic on that at some point.
Yeah, let's expand that. That'll be fun.
Next one is the SEC regulation, SSP compliance for smaller firms by June 3rd, 2026. Large entities were already hit December 3rd, 2025, so fairly new for them as well. And this is basically, it's pretty light. From this aspect, policy procedures, incident response, requirements for notifications, all that stuff and everything. But yeah, make sure if you're a publicly listed company, by the SEC, make sure you're compliant by a lot of this stuff here.
Was it all public companies or was it just public companies that do financial stuff?
I would have to double check.
Okay.
I mean, SEC regulates all that stuff.
Right, but I think that the scope I was hearing was more the financial services related public companies.
Yeah, I think so.
Involved financial institutions safeguarding customer non-public personal information.
Yeah, it's like privacy and consumer stuff for smaller financial entities.
Yep.
Yeah.
And smaller ones cover broker-dealers, investment companies, advertisers, and transfer agents. Yeah, updating incident response plan, notification templates, enhancing vendor management, and maintaining records of these efforts.
Oh, I'm glad you went through that because I did not have that top of mind.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but that's a good point, and a good kind of separation with that. Another one here, we got 3 more EU AI Act.
Yep.
This is one that I think we talked about an episode or two ago. There were actually amongst member states in talks about cutting back a little bit about this, but nevertheless, there are still enforcements coming up August 2nd in 2026. So it's unclear. Like some of the implementation, still TBD from some of the member states that they're going to be coming out to say, here's what we actually mean by this type of thing. So again, it's a kind of a wait and see, but I think if you at least apply good frameworks of compliance in around AI, you'll probably be good.
Fully agree.
Yeah,
like
into this.
I mean, it's just like this is the same balance that you get with so many compliance stuff. It's like, well, if they set out just for objectives and you figure out how to do it, people are like, well, what's enough to pass?
Yeah.
And if you get like super prescriptive with it, then you get like a ton of pushback for the places like it can't apply or doesn't naturally apply. So I kind of like that they set out with a whole bunch of general objectives in a way. And I totally agree. Like sort of do your best in good faith to address them. And at a minimum, you're not going to be like found negligent typically.
Yeah, so another one for the EU folks, right? And this one's an August date, and the previous one was a September date. So, hey, that last half of the year,
you should be planning right now.
Oh yeah,
if not already.
Oh yeah.
NIS2 enforcement ramping up in 2026. So
another EU one.
Yep. Formal through the formal timelines with EU member states, April 26, and throughout the year is really wearing chips from kind of paper deadlines in enforcement mode. So be wary on that. Again, risk-based controls, incident response, governance oversight, and supervisory audits into there.
Yeah, and the big one on this, from my perspective, is I think April 17th is the deadline by which member states define who's critical and important from a company or organization perspective. And so you might get named as someone that needs to do the extra stuff on that date.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the 3 things here: ISO 27001, 42001 from an AI perspective, 27701. You bring one ISMS together and make sure you're hitting on the key concepts of those.
Yeah,
you'll probably start to be on the right track.
Well, it gets back to the fundamentals that you were talking about before, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, and lastly, I don't know if people pronounce it CIRCIA, but CIA Incident Reporting Framework. This is for critical infrastructure. So Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act. So this is if you're in critical infrastructure, power, transit, gas, other stuff. If you're in critical infrastructure, into that. They have incident response reporting timelines, 72 hours to report, 24 hours for ransomware notices into that. And that's going to be starting in 2026 here with that. And that'll be kind of binding for the critical infrastructure into there. So, yeah, some important dates. And, as we go on, there'll probably be more updates, to things out in the wild here. And
Just in general, it's a ton of stuff, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bunch of stuff hitting at once. And if, I don't know, whether you're figuring out your automation plays to address some of these things as much as possible, or getting additional resourcing to do it, or external help to do it, like, there's additional effort here. So if you have a global organization, you're not thinking about the additional workload, you probably should be.
So, Justin, I think this was a topic you added to the list, and I was wondering, where do you get updated? Like, what can we share with our listeners about where they can keep track of all this? Like, how do they know what's coming up?
So I monitor a lot of RSS feeds. I use Feedly to source in a lot of stuff. One thing I really like about regulatory updates is, what is it, JD Supra?
Oh, yeah, I love those persons.
Yeah. They do really good notifications. They're one of the main things I look at in my RSS feeds into that. So they do really good work. Look at that. Obviously, any of the like privacy or incident response or stuff out there that you're looking at will notify you onto there. A mixture of like some government sites, like I have HHS, CMS, onto there. They'll sometimes do like news bulletins on, guidance, which is sometimes interesting when you read some of those. They come out almost as mandates, and sometimes can change things into that. But yeah, that's where a lot of the stuff I'll look at and kind of do that type of thing. So yeah,
I'd also say if you're on the private side, cozying up to your legal team and whoever their external counsel is, they're typically interested in selling more things. Mm-hmm. And so they're happy to tell you about the new things that are happening in the jurisdictions where you operate. Same thing if you buy, and I'd probably advise for a more streamlined, purpose-built GRC tool. But if you happen to buy a big box GRC tool, they typically have giant kind of marketing arms that, again, want to equip you via their blogs or their relationship managers or whatever about the new things that are coming.
Not that many, though. Some do.
The Archers and the OneTrust and things like that.
The OneTrust does a good job on a lot of the privacy stuff and everything. So with that, but you get it in a lot of mid-market ones. They'll just regurgitate SOC 2 and ISO and whatever. You know, like they don't go off and be like, NIS2. Like here's what you need to do. Like very few will actually dive into other aspects of it.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. I think it's a good thing to like expand on this, and we talk about it. And a lot of times, even with our audience, it's not always applicable to them. But it's good to know, like what starts in the EU oftentimes trickles into the US, base, into that. So getting a heads up and like, okay, what's being regulated in certain areas of the world? Is this something I need to start having in the back of my mind to just structure my organization appropriately, or looking at budget, or, how to kind of frame what I'm doing today that it would be an easy add, not an uplift, type of thing. So
thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I use Feedly as well. And so if you're not using Feedly, it's a great tool. And it's not all that expensive for an annual subscription, but I just was looking. I don't have JD Supra in my Feedly list. I'm going to add it now. So thanks for that.
Yeah. So, great. Do we want to do drinks now, or I forget when our break was.
Well,
let's do the drink now.
We can do it now.
Yeah,
sure.
Because the next couple are similarly, related, into this. So for our drink, because it's the holidays, even though we're kind of past holidays, it's still our holiday.
It's still the holiday.
It's our December one. So we decided to do High West. They come out every single year with this. It's Midwinter Night's Dram. Every single year they come out with this, and it's often a hit. It's one of those love or hate. Like I see a lot of people that don't really enjoy this, but it's actually pretty good. It's rye whiskey finished in port barrels. So if you ever had a lot of those, like Angel's Envy is similar with that, with the sherry barrels, something like that, finished in kind of a wine barrel that gets kind of that fruity palate on the back. It's nice and easy at 49% alcohol, so just a touch under 100 proof, into this. And yeah.
Who makes it again?
High West.
And where are they at?
Great question. Kentucky. I mean, I have a pretty good.
Oh, thank you. I love this. I also think I'm surprised that it's 49%. I almost thought it's so smooth that they'd cut it down to 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said if you love it or hate it. I love this. It's very good, and it's
Can we
not
see that?
overwhelming on the port side. Like you get a little bit of a
it's very
finish, but it's
subtle. Yeah.
like Angel's Envy, I think, gives me a lot more finish with the sort of wine casks.
Park City, Utah.
No, there you go. Yeah. I figure, I have a 90% chance, of getting it right with
Kentucky or Tennessee. Or,
Yeah, well, Happy New Year's.
Cheers, guys. Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's.
So, if you haven't had it, it comes out once a year, usually around November-ish, I think, is when it goes on sale, and they make kind of limited batches to this. But excellent, definitely share it. And usually drums are, pretty good from a, holiday perspective. All right, so diving into misleading the feds here. I forget, was it one of you guys that
I think you started it, and I added on some things to
you're
it.
right. Yep.
So, real quick, high level. I think everything we want to talk about today is around how if you're not reporting accurately, then you're probably going to have a problem, especially if your customer is the federal government. Mm-hmm. And so that comes around in, I think the handful of articles, one of them was a FedRAMP related one. Another one was a CMMC related one for false claims as well. And these are turning into companies and individuals who are now becoming criminally liable for certain things. So that first article, I think this is one you posted, was a former Accenture employee was criminally charged for allegedly misleading the federal government about the security of cloud platforms used by government customers.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it goes into like some of the stuff like the attestation of what they were doing with I think it was vulnerabilities, to concealed platforms non-compliance with security controls under FedRAMP, and the management, the risk management framework, into this. And I think it's very interesting into this here. It just sets up kind of a precedent to say, if you're an employee, do not do this. You don't get paid enough to mislead, into this.
Oh, yeah.
Even though, and I don't know, obviously, all the story, with Accenture or is it Accenture?
No, former Accenture.
Former Accenture.
Former Accenture.
They're working somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it was Accenture Federal Services where the statements were actually done through this. But, I can imagine, we've seen it all before, there is often corporate kind of influence.
Pressure. I think pressure is a fair word.
Yeah. To, say, is it really that big a deal? We'll get to it
it's a big deal.
Next week, so we'll just say it's clean and we'll get it clean. Don't worry about it, And this is absolutely saying, no, you need to, no matter where you're at in the food chain of employees, you cannot do this.
This is a nextgov.com article. It looks like it was
we'll put
December.
The show notes.
December 10th, 2025 story. And you're absolutely right. And at the end of the day here, we plan to implement or we believe it was sufficient. That's not a defense for certifications when you got to say what your controls are.
Yeah.
Now, saying all that, and I think I want to segue into the next article here because they are very much related. And it's interesting because you hear about some of this prosecutorial type stuff here. And you read the article and it's oh yeah, they did bad. You come away with the impression that they misled, the federal government into this. And they absolutely could have, but you don't actually see what the details are.
Right.
I'd like to see exactly what they said about what and what state that was. Because one of the things that I actually had the opportunity with, if you're not 100% familiar, if you remember SolarWinds, one of the things a few years ago was that when SolarWinds had that big incident, where a bunch of, with their vulnerabilities into their platform, how many, and including federal government, customers had this issue and had, nation state actors coming into this. Well, the SEC decided to go after SolarWinds. Not only that, they went after the CEO and the supposed CISO at the time.
With personal lawsuits.
Yes, exactly against this. And obviously when you get wrapped up in a lawsuit, you can't really talk a lot about that. But the SEC finally dropped all charges with prejudice against the CISO, and I think dropped all the charges against SolarWinds as well, into this.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the former charges were dismissed back in July of 2024, but some of these still lingered on. And if anybody doesn't know what it means what does it mean to dismiss it with prejudice?
I mean, it can't come back,
right?
Into that. So they dismissed it and said this is, for whatever reasons, this can never be relitigated, into this, which is good, closes the door on it. But essentially, I had the opportunity to talk. I didn't talk to him, but it was a big conference call. Like 300 people actually joined up, and
so who hosted this call?
Tim Cook,
the former CISO.
CISO,
at SolarWinds.
So after all this, he went into it, and he didn't get into a lot of the information into this, but some of the stuff that was interesting, like he talked about his perceptions on. First off, let me level set. When they first came with charges with him, they said, like with anything with charges, especially from federal government, they'll often give you kind of a plea deal.
Yeah.
And they'll say, okay, if you plead guilty, you can no longer hold office, any officer position in any company ever again. And, you can't do all this stuff. And, he came at it, and good for him, from this. And to SolarWinds actually backed
supporting
him.
Yeah,
supporting him through this.
And I read that not only SolarWinds but their investors also were stand behind them.
Yep. So and basically said like we didn't do anything wrong. Like he came out afterwards and like everything that they basically claimed against me was false.
Yeah, I mean some of the terms of the plea deal were basically like, hey, admit that you had systemic failures to your program. Admit that you lied about those systemic failures.
Yeah,
and
Justin,
he was like,
can you give an example of one of the
he brought up one
failures?
specific example of what the federal government considered a systemic failure was they, during a review of some of their access control, found like 5 users that were over-permissioned.
Out of?
200 or 20,000 users. 5 users out of 20,000 users, and the government argued that was a systemic failure.
That
of
doesn't
access
sound
control.
systemic.
Yeah,
right. And that's the whole thing. It's like they, it was a conversation on the call. It's like, well, were they lying? It's like, well, it's a matter of interpretation at that point. Like, I would say a reasonable person cannot argue that 5 out of 20,000 is systemic, but.
Right. Well, and you can say it happened multiple times, but if the specifics of that, each time is, this is human error, this is different human error. 5 out of 20,000 ain't a bad percentage.
Well, plus, what else I read was that those weren't found and discovered by the government auditors. They were found internally and corrected using the information management system they have in place, right?
Yeah.
Their own processes found and fixed this problem. And they were doing the right thing by getting better, continuous improvement, they actually had a process in place that discovered this, found it, and if that's the case, their security program was working.
Yeah, as intended.
And yet, because they published that and they had proper metrics around what they found, somebody used it against them.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing was they got... he recommended that review your roles and make sure they're spelled out very specifically,
For your job description?
Yeah, well, job description, racy roles, when you sit on
Okay.
committees, stuff of that nature. One of the things that really drilled him was he was solely responsible for disclosures for the company. He's like, no, I sit on a committee for that. I'm one of the people that, offers, advice and insight for disclosing for the company. And the government said, well, you're responsible. And it's like, no, that's not a thing. So they had disagreements on who was responsible for what, and it might have been maybe a little bit vague into that because Tim went on and said, make sure it just spells it out crystal clear on, who's responsible for what, and certain aspects of that and everything. But they even went through, they're really trying to avoid, employee depositions. He said that was really hard on the company, and they, not only just deposed him, but a number of
His
people
team.
off of his team.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been around a deposition or gone through it, it is a ton of prep and work and stress. And
And you got big bright lights on you
Right.
and cameras
Yep.
and recording.
Oh, and by the way, you have day jobs.
yeah, exactly.
So-
Yeah, but they ended up having to depose a whole bunch of people and everything. Another thing that he brought up was they were even all the depositions actually pointed to said that they were actually good from a security. Opposite of what they were doing. So the depositions were good, slanted toward their favor. There was stuff that they contradicted into their filings,
Oh yeah, I heard that the facts, the government side of the case got just slaughtered in cross-examination and testimony or whatever whatever the procedure was when the facts were reviewed.
Yeah, and one of the things, it was really interesting. He, going into this was oh, they're just looking, his presumption before any of this started was they're just looking for the truth, and his outlook on this totally changed. They were just looking for basically a head to put on a stick, at the end of this.
I mean, there are times where the government or organizations look to make an example.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Did he talk about the stress levels for himself and his team as they were going through this?
Yeah. Yeah. He talked about especially with the depositions and everything like that, it was a lot on his team. They had to give, multiple breaks and kind of travel, breaks because they had to go up to New York to about the depositions. But he said they did awesome, into this. A lot of it coming through adversary just performed super admirably, through this.
And one of the things you started with, this went on for years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the lawsuits were started years ago.
2 or 3 years that they were that this was going on.
That's
and everything.
a lot of time to be in a very high stress environment with demands on your time that are both extremely important, extremely visible, and then also not necessarily directly related to you achieving your stated goals of your day job.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And another thing that why this case, I think, and good for Tim for fighting on this. Technically, he was not an officer of the company.
He was not a named officer.
Right.
He's a CISO, chief,
Right.
but that's a title, not necessarily
And the
written
thing is,
down.
the thing that why this is really big is named officers get named in lawsuits a lot of the time. Into this, they have they specific officer coverage.
D&O,
into
insurance.
That.
Yeah,
he was named as a regular employee as part of the the company was. So. Why this was a big deal from a CISO perspective, most CISOs, I would say, are not named officers.
Yeah, and if you're not covered by director and officer insurance.
Right.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you're like, hey, I don't have responsibility for patch management. I don't have responsibility for making decisions on risk treatments. That's not my role in the organizations. And now you're charging me, he didn't have software development underneath him, as a CISO.
And even just from straight authority, I risk advise, right? But I don't necessarily direct activities of other departments, and certainly not at the, executive tier from a named officer perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so So I'm thinking of a couple things. One, takeaways. Like if you're in a public company, what should you be thinking about? And when it comes to your job description, does it make sense to have your charter and your job description explicitly spell out what you're not accountable for as a new section? I haven't really written job descriptions to say this role is not responsible for the actual implementation of patch management, the actual secure code writing and stuff like that. That if something goes wrong, the CISO is very easily, and I commend SolarWinds for not doing this, for not making a scapegoat out of Tim, but for doing all of that. So what are you thinking are takeaways that people need to?
I've seen explicit negative statements in team charters. Maybe not super commonly, but enough that it's not like super weird for me. And typically it's paired with, you don't do this, but this is how this works, right? So like you advise on risk, but these are the teams that are responsible for addressing the risk or accepting or denying the risk or whatever. Not denying, mitigating, whatever. But I've not really seen that in job descriptions before. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I've just not seen that in the past.
Yeah, I don't think that will solve anything, because everybody has, wrongly stated, if you're outside of the security community, they think you're responsible for all security, in the organization, which is not a thing.
Right.
Your second layer, defense of the organization and oversight layer to ensure like everybody's doing the right thing as per the company's risk management tolerance, into that. That's your role, into that. And to guide and to show metrics and to, help with decision making, where appropriate on, what controls or mitigation steps or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, we can't actuate the change oftentimes just by our own department. Like that's not a thing that we can do. That takes senior management.
You report. I mean, I describe this probably poorly, but often describe this as like, we got to go tell mom and dad.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
but if mom and dad are, whatever.
It's the board. It's the executive team.
That's all you can do. Other than short of maybe finding a new job because you see something coming down the pipe.
If mom and dad aren't there to support you,
right?
Like, it might be time to find something else.
Clearly, make sure that you're documenting risks. Make sure that, and I always. And thinking, don't document your risks in a way that's going to become a problem for your company. You make sure your law department, your legal team is on board. I like having general counsel be able to weigh in on things. And sometimes I would go and get a directive intentionally from general counsel in order to go and deep dive into the risk assessment so that it's being done at the direction of counsel. And then to whatever degree I can, let counsel be in a position to defend the organization and to defend the decisions and the information that's coming out. And if there is any client attorney confidentiality or privilege, as they call it, I want to make sure that's in place.
Yeah.
So as you're getting into these situations, transparency is key, but I also like the idea of overly documenting what the roles are that you have, like you brought up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when we talk about risk management and all this stuff, and this is kind of related to the SolarWinds thing, which I think just from an outside, it seems like Tim did a good job onto this. Keep in mind, like the outcome shouldn't be your goal. I think it should be more about the wheel that you set up to deal with the issues, into that. So I've seen a lot of companies overemphasize, like, we are a low risk. We are always a low risk. And don't bring this medium to me, or high, like we're low risk, and they get so focused on the outcome that they miss the picture of like treating it right.
I expect a 4.1 every year on a scale of 5.
How many times have we had clients that are so focused on the outcome of it and not the wheel of dealing with it?
Yeah. Or even incentive structures, right?
Exactly.
Like, and this is like documented in a zillion risk frameworks, but like it's a bad incentive structure if it's the goal is to hit a specific target.
Yeah.
Like that can be sort of a secondary thing where you have an aim and you want to get there. But if like people are incentivized to hit a specific target at a certain time frame, I mean, you're just setting up situations where people are going to hide stuff or misdirect or scope things very intentionally.
That's why I like KPIs to be more aligned with the ISMS, with the Information Security Management System, which is the Plan, Do, Check, Act, the Deming cycle process that you were talking
That's the
about.
wheel that I'm talking about. Yep.
And to make sure that that keeps working. And so when you're really looking at the metrics that are going to make a difference in that situation, it's how many times have we had nonconformities reported internally so we could get ahead of them before they become an external security incident or breach. How many times has a risk actually turned into a nonconformity, but that risk didn't have senior leadership sign off that risk was acceptable for a duration of time? And it's those kinds of metrics that become not the leading and the predicting KPIs that you can use
and if
in order to get better.
Senior management sign off and they're okay with it, then it's not a non-conformity.
That's just what I was. Well, or it could be, but it could be there could be accepted risk, right? So like, hey, we have this.
Well, it's not a non-conformity to the
ISMS.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if it's on your register and you accepted it and say it's good for 6 months,
if you document it the right way,
it's good.
Yeah,
and then look at your trending.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of those items, but it's still written into your governance, that's a time when we go back and we say, look, for the last 3 years, you've never hit the metric of your actual policy and your standard that all criticals or all highs are remediated in 30 days.
Right.
I've not seen that once in this organization. So
is the metric broken or is your response broken?
Yeah. How wouldn't it be more appropriate if we just adjust a couple of things? Let's make sure that our governance documents don't say things that we can't do. And second, let's make sure that we evaluate that risk and then take that risk to senior leadership and say, sign off on this risk that's balanced by this policy that we can actually obtain, and then we can do the things that we say we do.
Yeah. Visibility and sign off and like sort of this concept of shared accountability for making the program better as a whole are some of the most powerful tools that if you're like a leader in an organization that you can leverage. It's funny how you'll see the conversation start to change where you go, hey, I'm here like surfacing this risk. I think we should do something about it. And people are like, well, we can't for these resources. Okay, I just need you to sign off on the fact that we can't do anything because of resources. Like I need you to put your name on that.
Yeah.
And people, well, we don't want to do that. Okay, well, that's fine. We don't have to, but you're mom and dad. You get to make the call, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to do something or not?
Right. And I would say that be careful on how you approach that because you don't want that to be the...
it's not combative.
You're not a team player, and that's why you're not working for us anymore.
Yeah,
but bring it in the right way. Bring it as a conversation. Let them know that... But before you do that, build the ISMS that requires you to write these things down at the right time so that you can say you're following the process. So our internal process is I bring this to you. We talk about it. I need to document it. That's the next step. First, I wanted to include you in the conversation.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be documented because that's what we already agreed or said we would do. And now you're following your steps. And make sure your steps are aligning to things where you can bring that transparency and visibility to top leadership of something that they can get ahead of before you ask them to put their name on a sign-off for something that they might otherwise not be happy with you personally with. Like, don't put them in that position. And you can build your process as ways to not do that.
Well, I always see it as like an exercise in setting expectations, right? And this gets back to like, well, what is the expectation of the role? And this, to some extent, gets back to job descriptions, right? So is it expected that you're going to, as a leader of security in an organization, solve all the security problems? Well, if that's the expectation, you probably need to reset that a little.
Right. Or update your resume because it's time to find that company where you can work for people who don't have that expectation.
Yeah. But if the expectation is that you're going to surface challenges, seek assistance in resolving things that you can't resolve yourself or direct people to resolve yourself, if it's clear when you need to go to mom and dad and, when mom and dad, then typically when you enter into those conversations, you're starting on the front foot because they go, oh, you're escalating this thing that we really didn't want to see. Well, we're happy to have the visibility. What do you need to help fix it.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about one more, but new topic on misleading the feds, but I want to make sure that we wrapped up anything you wanted to hit on SolarWinds.
No, I think that's very good and everything. I guess my kind of takeaway is phenomenal what Tim did in fighting this. It took a lot of bravery, because
I agree.
with this, and it really protected a bad precedent against all CISOs. Into that. So I'm really glad that he stood up, against this, because the plea deal could have been way easier, potentially into this.
Well, and for SolarWinds to support him and all that stuff.
And all that stuff. Yeah. Kudos to SolarWinds supporting him. Kudos to Tim and his entire team, with this. And I'm glad, even though obviously that vulnerability was really bad and, all that stuff, like, it happened. And it was a nation state. Like, we look at this and it's like, it will, like, bad things happened, through this, and they had a whole bunch of protections, and some people even on the call were like, so what was one thing that like led, to this? And, it wasn't just like one thing really. It was a series of things that led to an investigation that then caught it.
And the issue they had was a series of things that nation states can make real. You don't face every day.
Yeah, and he said, I mean, it was one of those things that was really patient too. So it was something like somebody clicked on something, but they waited like a week.
It was 2 weeks. It was 14 days.
14 days before they did anything with that opening. So like they clicked on it, they got foothold. They didn't do anything for 2 weeks.
Yeah, they just sat.
They just did nothing, no probing, no nothing, and, so that didn't like, normally when you're looking at like SOC alarms and all that stuff, they're looking for a string of stuff.
Yeah, it's happening pretty quickly.
Well,
right.
And I know of some things in more recent history where nation states have been seen to wait for 30 days or just over 30 days because it's a natural rollover for, say, live logs in some organizations or things like that. And so, again, this was years ago, right? So 14 days, just know that that's getting more and more insidious for nation states because they can choose to wait.
Yeah.
Right.
And they have a higher likelihood of being there longer if they wait a little bit, into that.
No, I'm really glad you brought the SolarWinds topic to the table today.
But you had something else?
Yeah, the other one I wanted to talk about is, so we talked about the FedRAMP one. I'm going to talk about the CMMC one a little bit. So over the last year in 2025, there were multiple cybersecurity-related False Claims Act settlements, and they were tied to the DFARS 252, 204, 7012, and that's also the stuff that NIST 800, 171 relates to. And as companies made representations that they were in alignment, and they went as far as they didn't have any kind of breach, but they went as far as putting into their SPRS system. That's a supplier performance risk system that you have to enter your scores in if you're a company who is a prime or a sub to a prime who is doing DoD-related work, which I totally expect over the next few years. All of the stuff the DoD is pushing will expand to be a little bit more no matter which government agencies you're working with. So, but one of the things that they had was these settlements. And so one of the settlements, and actually more than one, a couple of them came because of whistleblower activity. And so something that's interesting is these whistleblowers, that activity is increasing, and whistleblowers are getting somewhere in the 15 to 30% of the settlement money is going to them. And so there were a couple of articles, one on the Federal News Network, which I'll make sure that we have that link as well. It was a May 1st, 2025 story, and it's where contractors are being held accountable for these false cybersecurity attestations, and the information is getting put out into the SPRS system. And these are, gaps with things that were known internally, but were still certified as compliant. And this other article that came out December 5th was from justice.gov. And what happened was a small defense subcontractor agreed to pay, they settled for $421,000. And so this is just your smaller company. And the smaller companies,
these are primes or
these are subs to primes.
This was
a sub to a prime. And a lot of these sub to primes that I end up talking to on occasionally, they're starting to come around and say, we don't want to be. We know that as a small company, we're still need to do the right thing here.
Yep.
Because and that's kind of different than I heard maybe 2-3 years ago.
Right.
When CMMC was coming around, a lot of these small companies were like, I don't know this is ever going to be a problem for me.
Let's do what we need to do to get the deal.
I just need to do this. We're going to put the things in to the system and say we're good. But what's happening now is that more whistleblowers are coming to the table. And in this case, this whistleblower at this company received a little over $65,000 for just calling out their company, which was a small company. That's why their settlement was only $400 and some thousand versus these
Raytheon had like an
dollars.
$8 million one. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was another one out there. But and the point I'm getting at is that size here really isn't going to matter if you're a small organization. And the subcontractors is not really insulated from this problem.
Right.
And you don't need, you don't have to have a need to have an intent to deceive the government. You just need to maybe not have the right program in place to make sure that the controls you're attesting to and uploading into the system, maybe it was an accident. It didn't matter.
Right.
These things are still coming out, and employees are now being financially incentivized to report these gaps. So kind of pulling it all together is expect that somebody, and maybe it's a current employee, maybe it'll be a disgruntled employee who doesn't believe that you're doing the right thing. If you're a business owner and even a small business owner, you can be in a situation where it can get reported. They're incentivized to do it. And you need to make sure that your program is actually running the way it needs to be running and documented appropriately.
Absolutely. And this gets back to one of the things we were talking about before, where the visibility of problems related to this stuff is just increasing because, and I didn't know the phrase, I think it's called quitam.
Quitam.
I didn't know that legal phrasing before, but it's basically the thing that allows for those types of lawsuits. Quitam lawsuits allow, it's essentially whistleblower, also known as, I think, Lincoln law, I think. But it's basically where, you can be protected by whistleblowing on an issue, and you'll receive 15 to 30% of the overall settlement.
Yeah, and you can't be fired.
Right. Oh, yeah, you're fully protected. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I know from a government standpoint, they have whistleblower protections onto that. But is that the same for a sub in the private?
It absolutely is. It's called, so it's part of the, you mentioned it before, FCA False Claims Act. And it came in I think around the Civil War, so that the quitam, I went down this huge rabbit hole on this, but it ends up meaning, it's from this longer phrase that means he who sues on behalf of the king, but also for himself, or something like that. And it basically means hey, I'm going to pull the fire alarm on this bad thing that I see happening, and I'm going to inform the government of it. And if they choose to take it up, I get a piece of the settlement. And if they don't choose to take it up, I can still proceed with the lawsuit myself if I feel obligated to.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you have
but
you
what
have
if it's
protections.
false? Then there would.
If you're wrong, the government won't take it up, and I think it just kind of goes away.
Yeah, but I would imagine there would be no protections on.
No, you're not protected if you're lying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have a legit item, and it's just like it's like the non-retaliation kind of rules.
Yeah.
For a company.
But to your point, Joe, so you need to be, just recognize that there are incentives for people to kind of say something.
So threat modeling.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do this the entire nefarious way, what could you do? You could say, all right, hey, I'm going to do all these bad things, but I need to come up with my threat model and understand what it is. Well, one of the threats that need to be in there is I'm going to have somebody telling me. And so you need to know that. So I'm not encouraging this at all. Very ethical. You can only lose your integrity once, and that's it. So don't do this. But if you are doing it, know that another threat that is out there, and it's been there, is that somebody can tell on you.
Yeah.
And it's and in 2025, there were a handful, maybe about 5 organizations that settled just on the CMMC, the
Absolutely.
7012 stuff, and a subset of those, if not all of them, were related to whistleblowers who got money for pointing out that their boss, their company, were not doing the right thing.
Right.
So it's there.
Well, and it doesn't have to be like someone could tell on us. Doesn't even have to be framed in the negative in a way. It could be just like any other cybersecurity thing. Like, what if it was a human error type mistake, right? To your point before, or what if it was just an omission? Like we didn't do enough in the program, and someone said, "Oh, I don't think you're covering off bases here."
Yeah.
So you really, I mean, it is a thing that you should be aware of. Is that these things are going to get exposed more and more, and they're like. The ramp up was some double-digit percentage, like year over year for the past 2 or 3 years in terms of these things being reported.
Yeah, that's why the second line of defense, your compliance program, is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. All right. So, we say wrap up?
I think we wrap up.
Wrap up here. All right. Well, thank you.
This is great.
Yeah, this was good.
Yeah.
Happy 2026 here.
Happy New Year. This is a great
Cheers.
episode. I enjoyed looking at the notes for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And cheers, everyone. Happy 2026. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe up to this. We got some exciting stuff coming up next episode. We're going to be switching around the format just a touch. So looking for, we'll ask for feedback then, but don't forget to do that. And cheers. Have a good one. Bye.